My name is Emily. At the age of 15, Crown Prince Alexander proposed to me, declaring his intention to marry me. I became the most envied person in the entire capital, attracting both admiration and hostility. But no one expected that on the second day after our wedding, Crown Prince Alexander would leave the capital and head to the northern frontier. Just like that, I was left alone in a secluded corner of the palace. I love freedom, the rising and setting of the sun, the mountains and rivers, the customs and traditions. Not being confined within these four walls, waiting for someone who seems like a distant dream. 2 years later, my mother fell ill, and my father took her back to their hometown to retire. With no more ties, I planned to escape the palace. Unexpectedly, I ran into the returning Crown Prince Alexander and accidentally switched identities with him.
Emily!
The voice startled me, and I was about to run when a slender hand grabbed me.
What are you doing?
What am I doing? I should be asking you that. How did I end up looking like you? And why do you look like me?
He's asking me? I haven't even asked him yet. Last night, everything was ready, and I was just one step away from escaping the palace. But he had to appear right in front of me, causing me to bump into him and wake up looking like him. I haven't even blamed him yet, and now he's blaming me. How infuriating!
I don't know, but you're hurting me.
Hearing this, he let go of my hand but continued to stare at me as if he wanted to devour me. Wait, that's not right! Now I'm him, and he's me. Why should I be afraid of him? Thinking of this, I slyly blinked and cleared my throat.
What nonsense is the Crown Princess talking about? I'm tired and going to rest. Don't follow me.
With that, I took a big step and ran off, not caring about the angry look on Alexander's face behind me. Back in my quarters, I pondered the recent events, feeling a headache as I tried to figure out what to do. Just then, a guard named Thomas brought a large pile of documents and dropped them in front of me without a sound.
Are these memorials? Does the Crown Prince have to review them too?
Your Highness, these are the recent affairs of the court. Please review them.
All of these? Do I have to read them all?
Yes.
I groaned inwardly but, to avoid being discovered, forced myself to start reading.
Someone, please save me.
The Emperor is here! A sharp voice broke my sweet dream, and when I recognized it, I jolted awake. I quickly got up, took a big step, and accidentally stepped on my robe, falling heavily to the ground. I pretended to kneel there, my head deeply bowed. My mind was blank, really.
Alexander, what are you doing? Get up! Get up!
Haha, what are you talking about, Your Majesty? I just didn't want to disturb you.
Henry looked at me suspiciously, and I realized I had used the wrong term. Damn it! How could Alexander call the Emperor Your Majesty? Silence, dead silence. This damn silence. I was really afraid he would see through me in the next second. My palms were sweating.
Father, the Crown Prince was thinking of you yesterday, planning to visit you once he recovered. We didn't expect you to come first.
I breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Alexander walking slowly towards us. I couldn't help but feel a bit grateful and also realized I had been a bit willful. These past 2 days, I had deliberately ignored Alexander. Even though he sent people to invite me every day, I avoided him. I wanted him to experience what I had felt before.
Injured? Where? Let me see.
I quickly said it was nothing, not wanting him to really check. Don't I know if I'm injured or not?
Father, the Crown Prince's injury is actually nothing serious. On the battlefield, who doesn't get hurt? The soldiers and civilians have suffered much worse. Their injuries are the real ones.
Yes, the Crown Princess is right. Generals die in 100 battles, and heroes return after 10 years. Father, you should reward the soldiers well.
Henry looked at Alexander, then at me. Seeing that I really didn't want him to check the injury, he had to give up. He laughed heartily, and the atmosphere relaxed. I also secretly breathed a sigh of relief.
All right, I came to tell you that next week is your mother's birthday. I plan to hold your celebration banquet together with it. Don't miss it.
Yes, I will remember.
After the emperor left, I took the initiative to seek reconciliation with Alexander. I sought his help, even though I wanted to take revenge on him for marrying and then abandoning me, stripping me of my freedom, and making me the laughingstock of the entire capital.
I had also neglected him, just as he had abandoned me. But I couldn't avoid him forever, as no one else knew about our identity swap. If someone discovered it, both our lives would be in danger. I hadn't seen the vast world yet. I didn't want to die.
He glanced at me, opened his hands nonchalantly.
I have no solution either.
Ugh, how infuriating. He was the one who was furious back then. And now he doesn't care at all. What does he want?
I took a deep breath and adjusted my tone.
Don't you want to return to being the crown prince, the one above all but one? What's the point of being Emily?
Before I could finish, he suddenly pinched my nose, catching me off guard, and stared straight at me.
I want to see how a little cat lives.
A cat? I did have a cat. The deep palace was too lonely, so I kept a cat for comfort. But what does switching back to the crown prince have to do with watching a cat?
I was about to voice my confusion when he suddenly spoke.
We still need to find a solution. There are many books in the West Garden. I've been there recently, and you can come over when you have time. I've already informed Spring, and he will help you hide your identity.
What? Spring? So he knew my identity and still delivered memorials to me every day? And I, like a fool, played along with him. Now it seems I really am a fool. Then, the daily memorials? I can't handle them. How about?
I blinked expectantly, waiting for his response.
The memorials should still be reviewed by you, the Crown Prince. However, after you finish each day, they will be sent to me for review.
My heart sank.
I never thought I would one day see such a cunning smile on my own face. I was furious. Actually, it doesn't have to be so troublesome, hey.
The only response was the swish of his clothes as Alexander walked away. My hands slowly clenched, and I nearly ground my molars to dust. Finally, I muttered.
Fine, Your Highness.
Back in my quarters, I pondered the recent events, feeling a headache as I tried to figure out what to do.
Your Highness, these are the recent affairs of the court. Please review them.
All of these? Do I have to read them all?
Yes.
I groaned inwardly but, to avoid being discovered, forced myself to start reading. Someone, please save me. I accidentally let out a laugh, and everyone around me quickly knelt down. Olivia saw me too and started crying.
Crown Prince, Emily splashed water on me, boo-hoo.
Crown Prince, it was you who splashed water on her. Despite this, I tried to suppress my laughter and said,
Emily, what happened?
Alexander calmly adjusted his hair, dusted off his clothes, stood up slowly, bowed to me, and replied,
I did splash her. So what?
Wow, with all that build-up, I thought there would be a lie to cover it up.
Just a little squabble, nothing worth mentioning.
Olivia became even more upset, seeing that I wanted to brush it off with a few words, and started crying louder. Seriously, you should be whining to the real crown prince next to you, not me. At this moment, Alexander spoke coldly.
Why don't you ask her why I splashed her?
I looked at Olivia, expecting her explanation. I had heard everything she said earlier.
I was just joking with the crown princess, and she suddenly splashed me, boo-hoo.
Joking? How ridiculous. I didn't know calling a married woman a discarded wife was considered a joke.
Alexander laughed coldly, a chilling aura emanating from him, making everyone shiver. Olivia trembled in fear, not expecting Emily to be so bold today. She thought Emily was acting so arrogantly because she had the Crown Prince's support, which made her even sadder, and she started sobbing again. I looked at Alexander, feeling like a cat whose secret had been discovered, both grateful and ashamed. I couldn't say anything for a moment. In the end, I ordered a punishment of 10 strokes with a rod to settle the matter quickly. After all, as the Crown Prince, I couldn't act recklessly. But Alexander insisted on 50 strokes. Come on, I'm doing this for your sake. You could have told me quietly, but now everyone will blame me, Emily. Besides, 50 strokes could be fatal.
50 strokes as a warning. Anyone who dares to bully the Crown Princess again will face double the punishment.
She is my wife.
I twitched my mouth. This sounded touching at first, but coming from Emily's mouth and directed at me as Alexander, it felt shameless. At this moment, I wanted to find a hole to crawl into. It was so embarrassing.
Anyone who dares to bully my wife again will face double the punishment.
After the banquet, Alexander pulled me aside.
Have they always bullied you like this?
I nodded reluctantly. He punched the wall behind me, causing blood to seep out.
You never fought back?
I stared at his hand, worried. That's my hand. I quickly took out a handkerchief to bandage it. They say hands are a person's second face. I don't want to be missing any limbs when we switch back. He looked at me, his gaze inexplicably gentle, and said softly,
It's nothing. I'm fine.
How can it be nothing? It's bleeding. If not treated, it will leave a scar.
It's not a big deal.
It's not your hand, of course you don't care. I need to take care of myself.
His face darkened immediately, and he pulled his hand back, saying it was fine and I didn't need to worry. Why is he so unpredictable? I wonder if my hand will scar. Back in my quarters, I pondered the recent events, feeling a headache as I tried to figure out what to do. Just then, a guard named Thomas brought a large pile of documents and dropped them in front of me without a sound.
Are these memorials? Does the Crown Prince have to review them too?
Your Highness, these are the recent affairs of the court. Please review them.
All of these? Do I have to read them all?
Without lifting his head, he replied.
Yes.
I groaned inwardly but, to avoid being discovered, forced myself to start reading. Someone, please save me. Back in my quarters, I pondered the recent events, feeling a headache as I tried to figure out what to do. Just then, a guard named Thomas brought a large pile of documents and dropped them in front of me without a sound.
Are these memorials? Does the Crown Prince have to review them too?
Your Highness, these are the recent affairs of the court. Please review them.
All of these? Do I have to read them all?
Yes.
I groaned inwardly but, to avoid being discovered, forced myself to start reading. Someone, please save me. Narrator, tone, serious. Hearing this, he let go of my hand but continued to stare at me as if he wanted to devour me. Wait, that's not right. Now I'm him, and he's me. Why should I be afraid of him?
Alexander, tone, cheerful. What nonsense is the Crown Princess talking about? I'm tired and going to rest. Don't follow me.
With that, I took a big step and ran off, not caring about the angry look on Alexander's face behind me. Charles's daughter, Isabella? Last year, she scared me with a snake, and we had a fight. She often insulted me. Now you're asking me how she is? Naturally, she's terrible. But what does Alexander think? I looked at him, but he gave me no hint.
She's all right.
How about making her your concubine?
Boom, my head was in shock. Letting Alexander marry her? No way, absolutely not.
Mother, let's discuss this matter later.
Victoria wanted to say something more, but Henry, who had been silent, spoke up.
All right, let's eat. The food will get cold. We can discuss other matters later.
Yes.
Yes.
Henry glanced at Victoria, and she nodded. Perhaps I was mistaken. Victoria then served me some food, and without thinking, I was about to eat it.
Your Highness, have you forgotten? You don't like almond corn.
I looked down and saw that Victoria had indeed given me almond corn.
Ah, look at me, I forgot. Thank you, Crown Princess.
Alexander carefully removed the almond corn bit by bit. I felt like I was sitting on pins and needles, eating with great anxiety, afraid of violating any more of Alexander's taboos. Fortunately, there were no more mishaps, but Henry kept staring at me, which scared me. The atmosphere became quite strange. After the meal, I quickly found an excuse to leave the palace.
Alexander, why don't you like almond corn?
I just don't.
All right, that was a pointless question. The atmosphere became tense again, and I stopped asking. Whatever he thought was none of my business.
You used to.
Did he think I was reckless before?
You used to have a hard time, didn't you?
I was stunned. Why was he asking this?
Your Highness, do you mean the 15 years as a child or the 2 years as a wife?
Both.
His tone became serious, and I felt a bit overwhelmed but still replied calmly.
Both were the same, like a bird in a cage.
He clearly didn't expect me to say that and looked at me deeply.
It won't be like that in the future.
It won't be like that in the future? What does he mean? Hiss.
Why is the carriage stopped?
There are attackers.
What?
The next second, the carriage toppled over, and I was thrown hard. Supporting the frail Alexander, I moved forward.
Who are you people? How dare you stop the carriage of the Crown Prince?
Those men, however, were not intimidated and charged straight at us. Fortunately, we had brought 2 attendants with us. Though they knew martial arts, they were no match for these men. Alexander was highly skilled in martial arts, but now that I occupied his body, I couldn't use his abilities. And she, with my appearance, couldn't display any prowess either.
Do you know martial arts?
I looked at her in surprise. Did he think I had some extraordinary abilities?
I don't.
I'll teach you.
I was so shocked that I couldn't close my mouth. I had never seen such a scene and had never learned martial arts. I really didn't know how.
Trust me.
Let's trust him this once.
Sink your breath to your dantian, gather strength upwards, focus it in your palm, and strike at his lower body.
Bang! A man in black fell to the ground. I felt a surge of power throughout my body. Is this the strength of a martial artist? It felt exhilarating. But before I could enjoy the moment, the other men in black swarmed in. The 2 attendants had already fallen. They wielded knives, and I was fighting barehanded. In an instant, I was so scared that I couldn't move. At the critical moment, I thought, am I going to die? Alexander, meeting you has been my misfortune. I should have run away earlier. I haven't even seen the beautiful world yet. In a daze, I seemed to see a figure like a demon, dominating the scene. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying on a bed. As soon as I saw who was by my bedside, my eyes widened in surprise. Crown Prince Alexander, the man's face, we had switched back. He seemed a bit tired, resting his hand on his forehead, eyes half closed, looking utterly exhausted. I stared at him, lost in thought, my hand unconsciously tracing his features. Suddenly, as if startled, I quickly withdrew my hand. I was just used to his face. Suddenly being back in my own body made me curious, that's all. Yes, that's it. Perhaps my movements were too large, as he gradually opened his eyes. Seeing my appearance, he didn't seem surprised. Of course, he knew before I did, so he might have already been surprised.
Have we switched back?
It's temporary. By tomorrow morning, we will switch again.
Alexander slowly poured a cup of water, gently blew on it, and then handed it to me.
Why can we switch back tonight?
William found out that this is a blood curse. Do you remember, half a month ago, when you knocked me over and a bottle broke? That was a phantom stone I found for you, from the northern regions. But it wasn't a real phantom stone, it was a poison.
So, that's when we were cursed.
I listened, stunned. So, I was cursed because of him. But he did say he found the phantom stone for me, so it's not entirely unforgivable.
Is there a way to break the curse?
There is, but I won't use it.
What is it?
Don't think too much, just sleep.
No, I just got my body back. I want to go out and enjoy it. Otherwise, I'll turn back into a stinky man tomorrow.
What did you say?
Bye-bye, Your Highness.
I made a funny face at him and then disappeared from his sight. Alexander's indifferent pupils gradually softened, and a faint smile appeared in his deep-set eyes.
If only it could always be like this.
Later, I found out that the way to break the curse was to exchange blood. If one person survives, the other must inevitably perish. Back in my quarters, I pondered the recent events, feeling a headache as I tried to figure out what to do. Just then, a guard named Thomas brought a large pile of documents and dropped them in front of me without a sound.
Are these memorials? Does the Crown Prince have to review them too?
Your Highness, these are the recent affairs of the court. Please review them.
All of these? Do I have to read them all?
Yes.
I groaned inwardly but, to avoid being discovered, forced myself to start reading. Someone, please save me. But unexpectedly, the end came so quickly. Emperor Henry issued a decree, deposing the Crown Prince on charges of plotting to usurp the throne. Since he had no other heirs, he appointed Charles's son, Isabella's brother, Daniel, as the new Crown Prince. For a time, there was an uproar. People did not believe that the Crown Prince would plot to usurp the throne and turned against the emperor. However, after the emperor executed a high-ranking official, everyone fell silent. It turned out that when Alexander said he had no family, this was what he meant. So, I guess that it wasn't that Alexander and the emperor and empress were not close, but that the real emperor and empress were no longer around. The current emperor's insistence on sending the Crown Prince to suppress bandits was just a pretext. His real goal was to lure Alexander out of the capital and weaken his power, leaving him defenseless. When I received the news, I was only wearing my inner garments, not even having time to put on shoes and socks. I just wanted to find Alexander as quickly as possible. When I saw him, he was staring blankly at the roses I had planted.
Emily, tone, hopeful, are they beautiful?
Hearing my voice, he saw that it was me and noticed I was only wearing my inner garments. He quickly picked me up and made to return to the house.
Emily, tone, insistent, the scenery here is nice. I want to stay here.
Seeing my insistence, he reluctantly took off his outer robe and draped it over me, carefully wrapping even my ankles. He then placed me on a nearby swing and gently pushed it.
Emily, tone, hopeful, are they beautiful?
Alexander, tone, sad, yes, they are.
Emily, tone, hopeful, I heard that desert roses are extremely difficult to keep alive. When I found it, it was already withered, but I believed it could survive. So, it reappeared before us.
Alexander, tone, serious, I believe in you too.
Alexander looked at me deeply, then pulled me into his arms.
Alexander, Tone, serious Emily, wait for me.
Emily, tone, cheerful, okay.
Alexander raised an army, solidifying his reputation for attempting to seize power. The entire nation was in an uproar. The once revered war god crown prince was now reviled like a rat crossing the street.
I offer 100 gold taels for Alexander's head.
But Alexander was no ordinary man. With 8,000 troops, he marched straight into the palace. The court was in turmoil.
When Alexander raised his army, I went to find William to verify something.
If you had come a moment later, I would have left the capital.
I just smiled without saying anything. I knew he was waiting for me. I did need his help.
Could you please testify for Alexander? He needs you.
I don't seem to have any friendship with Alexander. If we were to talk about relationships, it would only be the enmity of taking my wife. Why should I help him?
He looked at me intently, as if trying to see through me. I didn't expect him to say that. In my impression, he was always a gentle and comforting presence. But I had indeed forgotten that just because he didn't say it, didn't mean he didn't feel it. What I thought would be a simple matter turned out to be a chasm for him. Seeing my startled expression, he paused and then laughed heartily.
Just kidding. How could I, William, be so petty? Besides, if Emily asks, I will naturally comply.
I'm sorry, William. If I could repay you, I would do so 100-fold. Then I'll trouble you, William.
He paused, perhaps because I hadn't called him that in a long time. After all, we had grown up.
I once offered my heart to the bright moon, but the bright moon shone on the ditch.
I felt ashamed. Outside the grand hall of the palace, two sides faced off against each other. One side, led by Henry, consisted of court officials whose eyes were filled with anger, and some even with disappointment. The other side, led by Alexander, was mostly made up of his brothers-in-arms from the frontier, looking like vengeful spirits, hating everything.
Rebellious son, do you intend to commit patricide?
Patricide? Do you even deserve that title?
The court was in an uproar, with everyone condemning him. At this moment, Alexander looked like a demon from the underworld, his gaze fierce enough to pierce through Henry. He bore not only the pain of losing his parents but also the agony of recognizing a traitor as his father. And in the court, under the eyes of all officials, no one believed him. He wanted to wait, to let them reveal their true colors and then cut them down with his sword. But he couldn't wait. After today, he and I would switch back to our original bodies, making it difficult for him to seek revenge. Therefore, he had to win this battle, no matter what. Just before the battle began, William and I appeared. He held the evidence that Alexander had gathered recently, listing how Charles had colluded with foreign tribes and used Miao witchcraft to poison Henry and Victoria.
And the one you now serve as the emperor is nothing but an impostor. The real emperor has already passed away.
The court was in chaos, with some people furiously accusing him of nonsense, some skeptically pondering, and others waking up from a dream and starting to curse. I looked at Alexander, and he looked at me. His incredulous eyes seemed to say I shouldn't have come. I smiled faintly back, as if to say he shouldn't have left me behind. In the end, Alexander compromised, the fierceness in his eyes gradually fading, replaced by a touch of tenderness. He pulled me behind him to protect me from any shock. I looked at William, who turned away, not looking at me. I actually wanted to thank him for being willing to use his identity as a divine healer to verify Alexander's claims. Today's farce ended with three factions, one insisting that the crown prince's claims were fabricated for power, one remaining neutral, and one believing in the crown prince, citing the emperor's recent absurd actions of increasing taxes and exploiting the people. The unanimous decision was to invite the retired national teacher to verify the truth of the emperor and the crown prince's words. Both Henry and Alexander opposed this decision. Henry opposed it because he was a fake and feared exposure. Alexander opposed it because he knew we would switch back tonight, and as the fake crown prince, I would be easily exposed.
Foolish man, I came with the determination to win. I had already asked William for help, we wouldn't switch back. He had promised to use my blood to extend your life. You are a good crown prince and will be a wise ruler in the future. Without Emily, the great Yen kingdom would still exist, with its mountains and rivers. But without Alexander, the great Yen kingdom would truly cease to exist, leaving the land shattered and the people in misery. How could I remain unscathed then? I, Emily, in the name of the crown princess, request the national teacher to come out of retirement and verify the truth of the crown prince and the emperor.
Alexander looked at me in disbelief, wanting to speak but was stopped by me. In the end, despite Henry's reluctance, he couldn't withstand the official's arguments and was forced to agree. To ensure the national teacher's safety, I had Alexander send a group of people to protect her. And Henry and Victoria were naturally under surveillance to prevent any accidents. By the time we returned, dawn was breaking.
Why?
Why what?
Why haven't we switched back even though the time has come? Why did you take it upon yourself to seek out the national advisor? Why are you helping me so much?
By the end, his voice had become so faint it was almost inaudible.
Why so many questions? We haven't switched back because William has already found a way to resolve this. From now on, you will be Alexander and I will be Emily. We don't need to switch back. Since that's the case, why not seek out the national advisor? Is it because the crown prince is unsure? Also, I have a condition for helping you. You must promise me one thing.
William found a solution? How come I didn't know?
Didn't have time to tell you. Besides, you didn't know we would find evidence for you today. Tell me, if we hadn't come, were you really planning to eliminate the imposter emperor?
He ignored my question, staring straight at me.
What method?
His gaze made me feel uneasy, so I broke free.
Oh, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. You can ask William.
He looked at me suspiciously but eventually stopped asking. I couldn't tell if he believed me or not.
So, will you promise me one thing since I helped you today?
He was silent for a long time before slowly saying,
All right.
I looked at Alexander, tears of joy streaming down my face, and hugged him tightly. In fact, I had asked William for another favor, to lift the blood curse on us, exchanging my life for his. From now on, you must live well for me. Back in my quarters, I pondered the recent events, feeling a headache as I tried to figure out what to do. Just then, a guard named Thomas brought a large pile of documents and dropped them in front of me without a sound.
Are these memorials? Does the crown prince have to review them too?
Your Highness, these are the recent affairs of the court. Please review them.
All of these? Do I have to read them all?
Yes.
I groaned inwardly but, to avoid being discovered, forced myself to start reading.
Someone, please save me.
My name is Alexander. The first time I saw her was at the Plum Blossom banquet. Her conversation and behavior were extraordinary, and her insights into plum blossoms were particularly unique. I was instantly captivated.
I thought that no woman in the world could compare to her, and she was the one I, Alexander, had chosen for life.
Later, I learned that she was the daughter of Minister Sue, Emily. I immediately asked my father to grant me a marriage, making Emily the crown princess.
However, my mother believed that the Sue family was not worthy of the royal family and insisted on making her a concubine while marrying Isabella. I was unwilling. Among the countless women, I only wanted her. If I couldn't marry her, I would rather not marry at all.
My father used the border war as an excuse to delay the discussion. In the end, I used the pacification of the northern border as a bargaining chip to marry Emily.
Later, I found out that my father and mother were no longer in power at that time. They were merely puppets of Charles, who wanted me to marry Isabella to use a substitution method to control me. However, I was willing to go to the northern border, which played right into their hands.
I originally wanted her to get to know me slowly before getting married, but the northern border was too dangerous, and I had to leave for the northern border the day after marrying Emily. I didn't expect that this trip would last 2 years.
During those 2 years in the northern border, I wanted to return to see her as soon as possible, but every time I thought of the method of control, the enemy could easily break it. At that time, I suspected there was a traitor, but I didn't expect that after severe torture, the one who confessed was my father.
I had to guard against internal threats, build up my forces, and attack the northern border. Finally, after 2 years, I returned victorious.
Back in the capital, the first thing I wanted to do was see her.
But who would have thought that an accident would cause us to switch identities? I didn't expect that she resented me so deeply. It was all my wishful thinking. She resented me, and I was willing to bear it.
It seemed that she was even more adorable in my body, fierce, angry, bold, and sneaky. I didn't know that my face could have such rich expressions.
Henry seemed to have noticed that I was investigating him, and since I didn't go directly to the palace upon my return, I wasn't surprised when he came.
However, holding my victory banquet and my mother's birthday together made me more certain that they were not my real parents. My mother valued etiquette and would never mix her birthday with anything else.
On the day of the victory banquet, I didn't know that Emily had been living so miserably for the past 2 years. As the crown princess, she was humiliated at will. At that moment, I wished I could cut them down with my sword.
I couldn't wait to declare her sovereignty, even though I was now the crown princess. Even if it was unrefined for me to say it, I still wanted everyone to see the love and harmony between Crown Prince Alexander and Crown Princess Emily. From then on, anyone who bullied Emily would be my mortal enemy.
Later on, I made sure they paid the price they deserved. At the family banquet, they had apparently guessed that Emily and I had switched identities, but they were not certain. They deliberately served almond corn to test us, and the assassin sent that day was also their doing, clearly with lethal intent. If Emily and I hadn't switched back, the consequences would have been unimaginable.
William's appearance made me feel threatened once again. I had already lost favor in Emily's eyes, and if he succeeded this time, I would have no chance.
I deliberately set 3 conditions to keep her away from William. I admit it was a bit unreasonable, but I did it anyway. When they were together studying ancient texts, even though they were using my body, I was still very angry. I deliberately made loud noises with the books just to get Emily's attention. I didn't expect her to dare to confront me.
Fine. Then I'll annoy you.
I stopped reading and deliberately wandered around in front of her, constantly. Later, William did find a solution, but it was dangerous, requiring a life-for-life exchange. At that moment, I truly regretted it. If I hadn't met her, she wouldn't be in this situation because of me. I secretly vowed never to use this method. I knew Emily had her own dreams. She longed for freedom and always wanted to see the vast world outside, to live among the mountains and rivers. But now, I couldn't promise her anything. For the trip to June County, I had to take her with me.
Before leaving, I offered 20 years of my life to ask William to perform acupuncture for us, exchanging our identities for a month. William told me the journey was dangerous and we must not act recklessly. After a month, our identities would automatically switch back. I understood and set off.
The bandits were just a pretext, the real challenge lay ahead. Sure enough, a few days after arriving in June County, the false emperor deposed me as crown prince on charges of treason. He had guessed that Emily and I had switched identities, but he didn't know that I had returned.
I raised an army and stormed the palace. I had planned to gather evidence and deal with him slowly, but I couldn't wait any longer. If I didn't kill him today, he would come for me tomorrow after our identities switched back.
But at the critical moment, Emily appeared. I couldn't believe it. What was she doing here? Didn't she know it was dangerous? She had William make public the evidence I had collected and the ancient texts he had found. Later, the truth was revealed, and the people decided to let the national teacher distinguish between the real crown prince and the emperor.
I refused. After tonight, I would no longer be the crown prince. The national teacher's presence wouldn't matter, but Emily agreed on my behalf. She said she had found a solution and had done me a great favor, asking me to promise her one thing. I was terrified, but when she softly asked if it was okay, I was bewitched and said, okay. I truly owed her my life.
Later, the truth came out, and Emily left. She said she was going to find her mountains and rivers, and her only request was that I not look for her.
At that moment, I realized I had truly lost her. She would never forgive me.
At the enthronement ceremony, I announced the new era name, derived from Alexander and Emily, as Yuha. Sitting on the throne, my heart ached uncontrollably.
From then on, I was just Emperor Alexander, bearing the responsibility for the country and the people, guiding the nation from the high temple.
Later, I worked diligently, enacted new laws, reduced taxes, and became a praised emperor, but I could no longer hear her say, "You must become a wise ruler."
Eventually, I adopted a child who had a personality similar to Emily's, a bit playful and stubborn. I named him Ethan. I taught him everything I knew and told him his mother was Emily.
In the end, I think I couldn't hold on any longer. Emily was gone, our pet cat was gone, and now, I was leaving too. I took out the magical stone I had found for her. This time, I would give you the real magical stone.